Old wooden chairs creak in time. We remember hot summer nights, cool with tales from December. Worn hands wave stories spun from lives full of grace. The magic of the porch where dreams find their place.
My husband was friends with Dr. Martin Luther King. The seminary had a meeting of the seminary students, and my husband met Dr. King. And Dr. King's father was a minister, and my husband's father was a minister, and they struck up a friendship. Every once in a while, Dr. King would call my husband in Petersburg, and he would tell them what was going on. We had a big mass meeting with Congressman Adam Clayton Powell as the speaker. They had rallies. They told you what to do and how to act nonviolently when you were arrested, when you sat in at the counters, the lunch counters. I began to think nonviolence was the way. I agreed with Dr. King and my husband. I was stunned. We saw in the newspaper that these 4 young men from North Carolina counter. I admired them so much because they sat there, even though the people picked on them and beat them, picked at them. And I knew then that nonviolence was the way to go. After the sit-ins, Dr. King asked my husband to come to Atlanta to be the executive director of his Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And we were there for 4 years when SCLC really got started. And the board of SCLC, my husband said he asked them for a raise. They paid him $10,000, which was a big raise from what we got in Petersburg, which was $3,600 a year. But he said he asked them for a raise because they were making over $1 million, and he had instituted this program for them to raise funds for SCLC. And the board denied paying him, giving him a raise. And he said he told them, one day you'll look up and I'll be gone. And that's what happened. And that's how we got to New York. I was offered a job at a publishing company, Negro Heritage Library Publishing Company. They published the Black history books. And they sent someone down to Atlanta. Only their salesmen were Black. It was all run by white people. And Dr. King asked them, well, why don't you have anybody on board who's on your board who is Black? And they said, we can't find anybody like Wyatt. And so my husband told him, well, I'll go. And that's how we got to New York. Canaan was a young church, but they had in their contract when my husband went to the first meeting that they would be a tithing church. And he said he suggested to the board that they either tithe or take it out of whatever it was that they had it written in. And the board decided that we would tithe. And so Canaan's members, they were not rich people. We had a few doctors, a few lawyers, but the majority of the people tithed. And that's why Canaan was able to do so much. Since the church was doing very well, I think about 80% or maybe even 90% of the people tithed. And they were able to build 5 apartment buildings. 2 of them were for seniors. They took care of the elderly. They tried to eliminate the drug dealers. They did so much. I don't know how they did it all. There are pictures of him on top of an automobile. What happened was the young people, there was a drugstore up at the corner from the church, and the young people would go in there and get candy and whatnot. The church had 3 stories, and my husband wanted the members to let the young people have their dances up on the 3rd floor, which had a huge auditorium. The board decided, the chairman of the board said no dancing in the church. It's part of the church. But after my husband explained to him, Deacon Cooper got on board, and they had just dancing upstairs when they had their graduations. They could have their little dances upstairs on the third floor of the building. And that was how everybody got so involved. People saw that the church was doing something and was looking out for the young people, especially. People came from all over, even from other churches, to that church. Before we went to Canaan, my husband preached at Abyssinian. Abyssinian grew. When we went to Canaan, some of the Abyssinian members, even some of the deacons' wives, came to Canaan. So we drew in a lot of people from all over the city. And with building the houses, my husband said, if we didn't build these houses for the elderly, and the people would have to move out of Harlem. And so that's how the church became so active and how they grew in Harlem. My husband ran the New York office for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. There was a case that came up that they lost. Dr. King, it was Wyatt Walker versus the city of Birmingham. My husband had told my husband, we're going to name this case, this trial after you. They lost the case, and we were in New York then, and my husband, true to the nonviolent creed, if you lose, you got to pay the penalty. He went back. Dr. King called him, and he had to go back to Atlanta and serve with Dr. King, Dr. King's brother, and some other ministers. They had to go back and serve that time. We didn't do a lot of the movement stuff together. We were personal friends. Mrs. King was, as she should have been, she didn't come together with Mrs. Abernathy and Andy Young's wife and myself, and because she was busy doing her own thing with Dr. King. And so the rest of us would get together on Saturdays at Gene Young's house because we all had children about the same age. And that's what we did on Saturdays. We got together. During the week, my husband and my oldest son would go to the YMCA and swim. But Mrs. King, she was very nice, a lovely person. But she did not mix as much with us as we did with the other people. At the March on Washington, we sat on the podium where the speakers were and whatnot. The three of us sat together. We were friends because Mrs. Abernathy had children my son's age, my children's age, and so did Mrs. King. But we were friends, but I was closer to Mrs. Abernathy than Mrs. King. After Dr. King made that beautiful speech, I said to Mrs. King, as we usually do when your husband does a good job, I told her it was a beautiful job that her husband had done. It was an experience like I had never experienced. It was a beautiful feeling, and looking out at all those people and everybody behaving themselves and getting along, whites and blacks. It was a beautiful experience. And then when Dr. King spoke, I mean, it was just out of sight. I had tears in my eyes. We thought things by now would be much better than they are. And things did improve for a while, for a good while. The Voting Rights Act, Board of Education, things did improve. And we were proud of what we were doing. I don't think it hurt us more than it helped us. I think it helped us, and it also helped white people. It made things better for them, and I don't think it hurt us at all. Well, it did. Maybe some of the black people had more privilege than they did before, but you had to expect something to happen that wasn't good. When they got these good jobs and big positions, what happened, I think, was a lot of the black people, when they got them, then join the white churches and whatnot. We just wish they would join the black churches and help more black people than they did. Some of them did. Some did join and some didn't. Well, the young people today don't know what people went through to get it how it is today. We felt things were improving, but the young people coming along just didn't. After Dr. King died, I think, the young people just didn't participate in movements, and I guess they felt like they did not have a leader. We'll never have another Dr. King. I know there's a movement now that we all have to participate in. It's really a black movement. Don't spend your money where you're not respected and can't work. Where you're disrespected, don't spend your money. Hold on to your money. That the black people stuck together and they did not ride the buses and did not spend their money where they could not work and were disrespected. I think it is by design. We just don't, well, we've been treated so poorly, I guess, by the white people. So I guess it is by design. And the young people don't want to take that nonsense anymore. We had white help with the March on Washington. There were a lot of white people there. Now, it looks like with the administration that we have, it looks like we're going backwards. One day, like I said, we will overcome.
From lives full of grace, the magic of the porch, where dreams find their